everyone, I'm Ethan with Awaken Catholic, and this is Awaken the Saint. Today we celebrate the feast day of Saint Elisabeth of Schönau, a somewhat divisive saint who had a great many visions and wasn't sure how to react to them. Elisabeth was born in Germany in 1129. Her early life was unrecorded, though it's probable that she came from a noble family. She received her education in the monastery of Schönau and became a Benedictine nun at the age of 18. She was a devoted observer of the Benedictine rule from the start, some might even say too devoted. Elisabeth practiced extreme acts of asceticism and would regularly deprive herself of her needs, to the point where her health suffered. During this time, she was in contact with Hildegard of Bingen, another saint of the time. Hildegard was known to chastise Elisabeth in written letters, telling her to be more careful in her practice of mortification. Much like Saint Hildegard, Elisabeth soon began to experience visions, many of which occurred on Sundays and holy days. Holy figures such as saints, angels, and the Blessed Virgin Mary would appear before her and speak to her. She also had visions of events from the New and Old Testament, such as Christ's Passion. At first, Elisabeth was concerned about these visions. She wasn't sure if speaking openly about them was a good idea and was afraid they might serve only to confuse people. However, at the recommendation of her abbot, she decided to share what she had seen and heard with her brother Eckebert, who would eventually become a monk and abbot himself. Elisabeth wrote down what she had remembered of her visions, and Eckebert compiled and edited everything she wrote into volumes. When they were ready, he published them under his sister's name, eventually releasing 3 total books relaying her visions. In time, Elisabeth became well known, not just for her visions, but also for her wisdom. She was not opposed to speaking out against misbehavior, heresy, and even against clergy who abused their positions or misguided those in their diocese. She became a valued counselor, and people contacted her both in person and by letter from all around Germany and even neighboring countries. In 1164, still residing in Schönau Abbey, she died. She was not officially canonized, since canonization regulation hadn't been established at the time, but her name was added to the Roman Martyrology in 1584 and has remained there since. While revered in her life and celebrated as a saint following her death, the legitimacy of Elisabeth's visions is much debated among those who have studied her. Elisabeth herself believed at first that they might be a trick from the devil, and some theologians state that what some of her visions told her contradicted history or the visions of other saints. There is one point that nearly all of them all agree on, however, and that is that Elisabeth lived a life of virtue and devotion that deserves to be celebrated. While the saints are inspiring figures, not every saint needs to be perfectly infallible. And in fact, none of them were. One of the most prominent features of the saints is that most of them thought of themselves as miserable sinners, and instead relied on God's mercy to heal and guide them, as should we all. Saint Elisabeth of Schönau, pray for us.